phone call one night this week, and they said, we're from the polling agency, and I immediately told them what I thought before they ever had a question to ask me. And then they proceeded to ask me 2 or 3 more questions, and that didn't change the way that I had an opinion of politics whatsoever. Now, one of the first rules I learned about preaching is you may have opinions on politics, but don't put them in the pulpit. Share them outside the pulpit, not inside the pulpit. They had opinions about politics back then. The Roman Empire was great. We read about the Roman Empire and what it accomplished and what it was doing, but we don't sometimes understand the whole world history around what was going on. There was a group of people called the Parthians, and they were a great threat to the Roman Empire. And they talked about probably that threat to the Roman Empire. They didn't like the Romans, but what would happen if the Romans wasn't in charge? You know what the big debate is today? What's going to happen if we do get health care insurance, and what's not going to happen if we don't get health care insurance? And everybody's worried about what's going to go on with health care insurance. Carol and I will be talking every once in a while about when we might retire and things of this nature, and how can you even know, because you don't know what kind of coverage you're going to have in a few years. Politics. They sit out there and they talked about the politics of the different people that were in power. How about King Herod? He's extremely insecure, or Governor Herod. He's a very insecure man. If he finds out that people in his family might be a threat to him, he was so insecure in his position of ruler over that territory, he could have them put to death. And he was notorious for bringing out the sword to slay not only enemies, but also those who might consider himself to be a friend. They would talk about a king, Augustus Caesar. He was an aging Roman emperor, and what was going to happen to the empire of Rome that they were a part of, even though unwillingly. What was going to happen with them when something would happen to Augustus? Folks, does this not sound like Arab Station sometimes? Just change the name from King Augustus to President Obama. Change the name from Herod to whoever the governor might be. Just change the names a little bit, and it starts to sound like the old road gas station round table. It starts to sound like the coffee shop there at Sam's and Advance. It sounds like, again, like Arab Station, and we talk about all those things. I can hear them as they get around those fires and they start to talk. Boy, it's going to be a cold night tonight. Yes, it is. And look, the wind's starting to pick up. It may bring in a little bit of moisture. Yes, it is. And what happens when you go down to your Arab station? People are going to talk about 3 things usually. It's going to be politics, weather, livestock, maybe whatever they're hunting or whatever they're fishing for. It's going to revolve around those subjects, and it was the same way with them back 2,000 years ago and 1,000 years after the birth of David. Folks, in the 9th verse of that 2nd chapter of the book of Luke, I want you to look at what the Bible has to say. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. Now I started to ask myself this question. What would happen if, all at once in Arab Station, one morning when everybody's gathered there, the angel of the Lord would show up? I can tell you right now, David would be putting in a new plate glass window there in the front because 2 or 3 people would go flying through it. Back years ago, there's the story of a preacher that was preaching about the second coming of the Lord when a minor earthquake occurred, and the next thing they knew about him, he had done went through the window. Kind of shake him up a little bit. Folks, what would happen to you if you were sitting there at your table with your wife or your husband one morning and the angel of the Lord would show up? Well, we read that verse, the glory of the Lord shone about them, and what happened? They were afraid because now their whole world had just taken on a different aura, and one that they had never known before. See, whenever you're in the proximity of the Lord, things start to change in your life, and it can make you a little bit nervous or a little bit afraid. Now, the angel of the Lord was actually God's messenger that he would send on this earth for some particular occasions. And the first time that he appeared was to Sarah's handmaid, Hagar, in the book of Genesis, during the days of Abraham. The second appearance that the angel of the Lord would make was to Abraham. The angel of the Lord was the entity that protected Moses and the Israelites when they left Egypt. And the angel of the Lord was the one who stood in the way of Balaam's beast when he sought to do harm to Israel and would not let him take him forward. The angel of the Lord was the historian to Joshua. And the angel of the Lord was the one that told Samson's mother before she would ever become pregnant that she would have this child that would do wondrous deliverance for Israel. He was the Lord's messenger. And what did they do when they were so afraid? The very first thing that the angel of the Lord told them was, don't be afraid. Now when God starts to talk to you, you may not see the angel of the Lord just show up and appear with all the brightness of heaven. But when the angel of the Lord starts to talk to you, your world where you know every single thing where it's at and everything that's going on, your world will start to change. And sometimes it can seem to be a little bit scary when things aren't the way that they've always been. Because the angel of the Lord brings about an awareness in us that has never been there before. Now I know this country. I said a little bit earlier, I know this country. Folks, believe me, I don't think anybody knows that route between Duck Creek and the Dark Cypress better than I do. I walked it when I was young, and I hunted. I ran it on a three-wheeler before anyone ever knew what a four-wheeler was. I had the second one that there was in this country. And now I drive all the roads. And when something's not right, I notice it right away. When I see a pickup I don't recognize, I notice it right away. If I see somebody on someone's land and I don't recognize their vehicle, I will call them up and let them know that there's someone out there who shouldn't be there. All at once, their world is out of order. Everything which was so normal was now not normal, and they were afraid. And when God starts to speak to our heart, one of the very first things that we can do, and it's a natural reaction, is to be afraid. When I was a young child and I was growing up and I started to understand what right and wrong really was, that what godly responsibility was, I started to have a fear in my life. And the Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. I started to have a fear in my life because I realized that the things that I was choosing to do was not right in the sight of God. As I got a little bit older and started to contemplate dedicating my life to the Lord, I became fearful of what the Lord would ask me to do. Now, down inside of each and every one of us, God had a chosen thing for us to do. Inside of each and every one of us, God had a job for us to do. The shepherds looked up, the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were afraid. And the very first thing that the angel told them was, do not fear. Over the 23rd chapter of the book of Psalms, the very first verse, David would say, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. David was talking about putting his trust in the Lord. And when you start to think about putting your trust in the Lord, it means for the first time perhaps in your life, you're going to put yourself in the hands of God. In the 23rd chapter of the book of Psalms, and in the 4th verse, he would say these words, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Those shepherds who knew how to use their rod and knew how to use their staff, now we're being told not to fear. David said, Lord, you are my shepherd. I thought about those shepherds there on the hillside. Now, if I was sitting there at Arab Station or there at Sam's and Advance and the angel of the Lord